Today we're going to talk about the 2025 Kansas City Chiefs. For years, the Kansas City Chiefs were the cheat code of fantasy football. But in 2025, that code finally broke. A 6-11 season? Missing the playoffs? The playoffs? Are you kidding me? It was a disaster at Arrowhead. But for fantasy managers, the nightmare started long before the first kickoff, when we learned Rashee Rice was sidelined for the first 6 games. Between that suspension, a mystery receiving corpse, and a Patrick Mahomes who had turned into a runner just to survive, the 2025 Chiefs were the ultimate fantasy headache. So today we're going to break down their season, why Mahomes was still an MVP, how the wide receiver room fell apart, and why 2026 is the year of the Chiefs' redemption. Let's start with the guys who actually showed up. Patrick Mahomes had a down year in real life, but in fantasy, he was a survivalist. He threw for nearly 3,600 yards and 22 touchdowns, but it was his legs that kept your team afloat. With over 400 rushing yards and 5 scores on the ground, Mahomes provided a high floor scrambling bonus that rescued his fantasy value. He wasn't just a pocket passer, he was a dual threat asset, an offense that desperately needed one. And then there's Travis Kelce. Despite the he's too old narratives, Kelce was the only target Mahomes could trust for the first 2 months. 850 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's still an elite tight end 1 finish in a year where the position was a total crapshoot. He was the only consistent thing about this offense. Now we have to talk about the wide receiver room. This was the biggest collective bust of the fantasy season, and it started with Rashee Rice. His 6-game suspension created a massive vacuum. Managers who drafted him had to stash him for over a month, and the guys meant to fill his shoes, well, they just couldn't do it. With Rice out, his targets were spread paper thin. Xavier showed flashes, but really struggled with consistency. Hollywood Brown had some early success, but faded fast. By the time Rice returned in Week 7, the offense had lost its grip. Now, even though Rice was electric in spots once he came back, the damage was done. No single Chiefs wide receiver emerged as an unquestioned weekly starter. Managers were left chasing points on the waiver wire, while the Chiefs' passing attack lacked any explosive identity. It was a rotating door of frustration that kept everyone silling, especially Mahomes. Now, when we talk about fantasy breakouts, usually we're looking for a rookie for this award. But in 2025, the breakout for the Chiefs was simply Mahomes' ability to adapt. Considering he was missing his wide receiver 1 for the first 6 games and had a receiving corpse that struggled to separate, Mahomes' efficiency was actually incredible. His completion rate stayed high, he didn't turn the ball over as much as critics expected, and he maintained weekly QB1 relevance despite the dysfunction around him. In a year where people were ready to write him off, Mahomes proved he's still a fantasy cornerstone, even when he's carrying the entire team on his back. So let's talk about the path back. How does Kansas City fix this for 2026? For starters, if they get a full season of Rashee Rice from Week 1, would be the single biggest addition this offense could make. We know there's another allegation out there. He may miss time. He may not. The hope is you get a full season of Rashee Rice. Add a true alpha wide receiver. They need a veteran wide receiver 1. Someone who can take the lid off the defense and let Rice and Kelce dominate the intermediate game. And we probably need to see a little bit of a scheme adjustment. More intermediate passing rhythm. The script stalled far too often in 2025. But more play variation is a must. And of course, health and continuity. Mahomes needs to enter the season 100% healthy. If he has a full deck of weapons and a clean bill of health, he's a threat for the QB1 overall spot again. The 2025 Chiefs were a struggling team with elite talent. They were anchored by Mahomes and Kelce, but held back by the Rice suspension and a lack of wide receiver depth. If you're drafting for 2026, don't let the 6-11 record scare you off. If they had even one high-end receiver to go with it, a full season of Rashee Rice, this offense is going to explode. But what's your move? Would you draft Rashee Rice in the 3rd round next year? Or are you still worried about the off-field drama? Let me know in the comments.